Welcome to a deep dive into the future of clean energy. We're talking green hydrogen, and get this, not just the hydrogen itself, but the incredible things it can create.
It's true.
Think green ammonia for fertilizer, green methanol for fuels and plastics, even green steel.
Yeah.
We've got a new report from the International Renewable Energy Agency, that's IRENA, and it's packed with insights. Today, we're separating the signal from the noise.
It's like everyone's buzzing about hydrogen these days, but this report, this is your backstage pass.
Oh, I like that.
We're going beyond the hype to see how this technology could actually reshape industries and in ways that you might not expect.
Exactly. And the best part is the rules are still being written, which means you, dear listener, have the chance to get ahead of the curve.
That's right.
It's like learning the playbook before a big game.
Yeah, what's really fascinating here is that it's not just about replacing fossil fuels with green hydrogen. It's about decarbonizing those sectors that are absolutely essential, but really hard, like notoriously difficult to electrify.
Okay, so paint that picture for us. What are we talking about here?
So think about it. Feeding the planet,
Mm.
right? That requires fertilizer.
Right.
And fertilizer, right now, relies heavily on fossil fuels.
Yeah.
The same goes for producing plastics, which, let's face it, they're everywhere.
Practically inescapable.
Inescapable.
Right.
And steel, forget about it. Building our cities, our infrastructure, that generates a huge carbon footprint. Green hydrogen has the potential to change all of that.
So it's like green hydrogen is the superhero we need to clean up these like necessary evils of modern life.
I like that, yeah. Take ammonia production, for example.
Okay.
We're talking 182 million tons produced globally just last year, and that's mostly for fertilizer.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, that process is, well, it's incredibly carbon intensive.
Mm-hmm.
But if you switch to green hydrogen made using renewable energy, you suddenly have a much cleaner way to make something we literally cannot live without.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like giving this essential industry a complete makeover. And it's not just ammonia, right? The report also mentioned methanol and even steel.
Absolutely. Methanol, that's another versatile player. You see it in everything from plastics to fuels. And steel, which is often seen as kind of the biggest emitter of them all, is also exploring how to use green hydrogen, how to use it to transform its production process. We're talking about potentially revolutionizing some of the dirtiest industries on the planet.
This is huge. But with all this talk of green hydrogen derivatives taking center stage, I have to ask, what's the catch? Is it really that easy?
Well, that's where things get a little bit interesting.
Oh.
As promising as all of this sounds, we're not quite at a point where every country is, singing from the same hymn sheet when it comes to regulations.
Okay.
In fact, it's a bit of a maze right now.
Oh, a maze. You know I love a good maze. What kind of challenges are we talking about?
Well, the European Union is definitely leading the charge with its Renewable Energy Directive, RED for short, and the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM. They've set a high bar for what counts as green hydrogen and its derivatives. They're aiming for at least a 70% reduction in emissions compared to traditional methods. But even meeting that target, well, it's not enough.
Wait, there's more? Tell me everything.
Okay, so one key thing they look at is additionality.
Additionality.
Okay, so you might think, great, more green hydrogen. But what's stopping a company from simply diverting their existing renewable energy to hydrogen production? That wouldn't actually reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, would it?
That's a really good point. So additionality is all about making sure we're actually adding more renewables to the grid, not just shuffling the existing ones around.
Precisely. And then there's something called temporal correlation, which basically means producers have to prove that the renewable electricity they're using to make their hydrogen is generated at the same time their electrolyzers are running.
Oh, okay.
So no claiming you're using solar power if you're actually drawing power from the grid at night.
It's like a green energy audit. They're making sure you're actually walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Right. And to add another layer of complexity, there's also geographical correlation, which ties the location of your renewable energy source to your hydrogen production facility. They basically have to be in the same neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
This ensures that the power used is truly local.
It's like a green energy passport control. So even if you check all those boxes in Europe, there's no guarantee your green hydrogen will be welcomed with open arms in other parts of the world.
You got it. And that's because different regions are coming up with their own certification schemes.
Yeah.
Think of it like a green hydrogen passport system.
Okay.
We're talking Certify, ISCC, Responsible Steel.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on.
Hold on. So Even if I've got my EU green hydrogen passport stamped and approved, I might need a whole separate visa just to sell it in, say, Asia.
Exactly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
All right, we're back and ready to tackle this whole carbon conundrum you mentioned. What is it about green methanol that makes it so tricky?
Well, to understand that, we need to go back to the chemistry lab for a moment.
Yeah.
You see, making ammonia only requires nitrogen and green hydrogen.
Right.
But methanol needs a carbon source too.
Okay, that makes sense. You need those carbon atoms to build the methanol molecule. But why is sourcing that carbon such a big deal for green methanol? Can't we just, I don't know, pluck it from the air?
You're actually not far off.
Really?
The report highlights that acceptable carbon sources, they can include biogenic carbon, which comes from plants or organic matter,
Okay.
or even carbon that's directly captured from the air.
Wow.
But here's the rub. The rules around this aren't crystal clear yet.
So while using fossil fuels is definitely a no-no, there's still some wiggle room for interpretation when it comes to what counts as a truly green carbon source for methanol.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. And without those clear guidelines, without globally accepted standards, there's a risk that some producers might cut corners,
Yeah.
using less sustainable sources while still slapping a green label on their product.
That's like putting a sugar-free label on a candy bar. Consumers need to be able to trust that the green label actually means something. Otherwise, the whole system falls apart.
You're absolutely right. This is where those different certification schemes we talked about earlier, they come into play. They're trying to bring some much-needed transparency to the sourcing of carbon for green methanol. But even those have their nuances.
All right, so let's dive into those schemes a bit deeper. What are they actually looking at when they assess the carbon footprint of green methanol?
Well, most of them share the same goal,
Okay.
reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Right.
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 But across the entire life cycle of the product, we're talking about accounting for emissions from the very beginning, from extracting the raw materials to the production process, and even to transporting the final product.
So it's not just about what happens within the factory walls, it's about the whole journey of that methanol molecule from cradle to grave.
Exactly. And this is where those terms we briefly mentioned, well to gate and well to point of use, come back to make an appearance.
Right, those system boundaries. To be honest, I could use a little refresher on what those actually mean.
Okay, sure. Think of it like baking a loaf of bread.
Okay.
Well to gate measures the impact from the wheat field to the bakery door, so all the steps involved in making the bread itself. Well to point of use takes it further, measuring everything up to your kitchen table, including how you toast it.
I love that analogy. So wouldn't well to point of use always be the best approach? It seems like the most comprehensive way to assess the true impact.
In a perfect world, yes. But tracking emissions all the way to the end user, it can get incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
Especially with a product as versatile as methanol, right? It's used in so many different ways, each with its own carbon footprint.
It's like trying to trace a drop of water in the ocean.
Precisely. So well to gate offers a more manageable starting point. It focuses on the part of the journey where producers have the most direct control over emissions.
Okay, that makes sense. So are these certification schemes all on the same page about which system boundary to use?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting.
Of course it does.
The report identifies a real mix of approaches.
Okay.
Some, like ISCC+, they're all about that well-to-gate assessment. They're laser-focused on the production process, making sure those sustainable carbon sources are used and that operations are optimized to minimize their footprint.
So it's about guaranteeing that the green methanol is genuinely green from the get-go. But then you have other schemes that are a bit more ambitious.
Yeah, some, like the Roundtable on Sustainable Biomaterials, or RSB, are starting to incorporate elements of that well-to-point-of-use perspective, even though it's more challenging. They're trying to connect the dots further down the line, considering the impact of how the methanol is ultimately used.
It's like piecing together a giant global jigsaw puzzle. Complicated for sure, but ultimately each piece brings us closer to the big picture of a truly sustainable future.
And speaking of piecing things together, there's another crucial aspect of these certification schemes: traceability.
Ah, traceability. Now we're getting to the heart of it. After all, what's the point of having all these standards and certifications if we can't actually track where the green hydrogen, or in this case, the green methanol, is coming from and going to?
Exactly. Traceability is key to building trust and ensuring that green label isn't being misused. The report dives into the different approaches being used, like mass balance systems and book and claim models They might sound a bit technical.
Oh, you know we love getting technical here on the deep dive. Don't hold back. Tell us everything. What are these mysterious systems all about?
Okay, let's start with the mass balance system. Imagine a giant accounting spreadsheet that meticulously tracks the flow of green hydrogen or its derivatives through the supply chain.
So it's like keeping tabs on those green molecules as they move from production to the final product.
Precisely. It allows companies to make claims about the sustainability of their products without needing to physically separate the certified material at every stage of the process, which would be, let's face it, incredibly complex and costly.
That makes sense. It's like a way to make things more practical while still maintaining those green credentials. What about the book and claim model? How does that work?
All right, so imagine a green hydrogen producer in a location that's ideal for generating renewable energy, let's say sunny Australia.
Okay.
They produce a batch of verified green hydrogen, and they book those environmental benefits, the emissions reductions, compared to fossil-based hydrogen. They book it in a central registry.
So they're earning green brownie points for producing clean energy, which they can then use or trade.
Exactly. Now, let's say a company in Europe wants to lower their carbon footprint and claim they're using green hydrogen, but they can't get it directly from Australia due to logistics or costs.
Those global supply chains can be tricky.
Yes.
Yeah.
So instead of shipping the physical green hydrogen, this company can buy those brownie points, those environmental attributes, from the Australian producer through the registry. It's like a green energy stock market.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's like they're buying the right to claim those emission reductions, even though the physical hydrogen they're using might come from somewhere else.
It's a way to incentivize the production of green hydrogen, even if the molecules themselves don't travel the globe.
This is all incredibly fascinating, but I have to admit, my head is spinning a bit with all these different standards, certifications, schemes, and accounting systems. What does it all mean for the companies trying to navigate this new world of green hydrogen and its derivatives?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
You're right.
It's both a challenge and an enormous opportunity.
Yeah.
On the one hand, this lack of harmonization, the sheer number of different approaches, it can be daunting, especially for smaller companies. It's like trying to assemble furniture from IKEA without the instructions.
I've been there. So what can companies do to make sure they don't end up with a bunch of mismatched green hydrogen furniture?
Well, first, they need to invest the time and resources to really understand the specific requirements of each market they want to operate in. Then they need to make sure they have the systems in place to collect the necessary data and to demonstrate their compliance.
So it's not just about making the green hydrogen, it's about proving that it's green every step of the way.
Exactly. And this is where those pre-certification activities that were mentioned in the report can be incredibly valuable. They can help companies find any gaps in their systems and processes and get everything in order before they actually apply for certification. It's like a practice run for the big game.
So it sounds like there's a lot of work involved, but what's the upside for companies that are willing to put in the effort? What's in it for them?
Well, the opportunity here is huge. As the demand for green hydrogen and its derivatives continues to skyrocket, the companies that can demonstrate a genuine commitment to sustainability, the ones that meet those stringent requirements, they're going to be the ones who win in this new market. It's like the California gold rush, but for green energy.
And with the stakes so high, I'm sure the race is on to figure out the best path forward.
Absolutely. I think we'll see some really interesting developments in the next few years, in the coming years. As more companies enter the market and as countries establish their own policies, there will be more pressure to harmonize these standards and certification schemes.
Maybe we'll finally get those IKEA instructions. But in the meantime, companies need to be proactive and really become experts in this area if they want to stay ahead of the game.
Exactly. And that brings us to what might be the most important question of all.
Yeah.
What does this mean for you, the listener?
So we've talked about the complexities of green hydrogen, the regulations, the certifications, even that carbon conundrum of methanol. It's a lot to unpack. But before we wrap up, let's bring this back to you, our listener. What's the key takeaway from all of this?
I think the key takeaway is this. We're really on the cusp of a massive transformation. Green hydrogen and its derivatives have the potential to reshape industries that are absolutely essential to modern life. And where there's disruption, there's opportunity.
It's like we're standing at the starting line of a whole new race. Understanding these rules and trends, it's like getting a head start.
Exactly. The demand for these green solutions, it's only going to increase. And those who can navigate this complex landscape, who can really demonstrate that genuine commitment to sustainability, those are the ones who are going to thrive.
So whether you're an investor looking for the next big thing, a company trying to stay ahead of the curve, or even just a concerned citizen trying to make sense of it all, this is definitely something you need to be paying attention to.
Absolutely. And what's really exciting is that this isn't just about big corporations. It's not just about governments. This creates opportunities at all levels.
Oh, how so?
Well, think about it. The specialized consultants who can guide businesses through this certification maze, the carbon accounting whizzes who can help track emissions, even the software developers creating tools to manage these complex supply chains.
It's like a whole new ecosystem is springing up around green hydrogen, and with that comes the potential for innovation and, let's be honest, some very interesting careers.
Precisely. And as this technology continues to evolve, we'll likely see even more opportunities emerge, things we haven't even thought of yet. It's a dynamic and rapidly changing field, which is, I think, part of what makes it so fascinating.
This has been an incredible deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, from the complexities of certification to the potential for green hydrogen to transform industries. This report has really opened my eyes to the possibilities, and I hope it's done the same for you, our listeners.
Me too, yeah. And I think the key takeaway here is that knowledge is power. The more we understand the challenges and opportunities in this sector, this emerging sector, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the future, whether as individuals, as businesses, or as a society as a whole.
So to our listeners, we say stay curious, stay informed, and don't be afraid to ask questions. The green hydrogen revolution is just getting started, and we'll be here to guide you every step of the way.
Until next time, keep diving deep.